asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
Now, Alison Shablow was on the programme last night, and that was a last-minute thing, an impromptu thing. Mark Windows was coming on, and enjoyed having Mark back on the show last night, it must be said. And Alison had sent an email around explaining what might happen today and what might not happen, and in the event that this or that happened, here's what people should or shouldn't do, kind of a thing. Are you with me? No? Right, it doesn't matter. But when she sent me that email anyway, I said, well, look, come on for a few minutes because Mark is going to be on. We can have a chat about today. She must have been nervous. Her sentencing was this morning. Thankfully, and I'm sure you know by now, but maybe some of our listeners do not know, Alison was spared jail. She avoided jail. Let me read you a couple of lines. Let me read you from the BBC today. A blogger. Well, she's more than a blogger now. She's a comedian, satirist, and accomplished musician, whether you like her songs or not, or the music. And she's more than a blogger. So the BBC says a blogger who was found guilty of broadcasting anti-Semitic songs on YouTube has been given a 2-year suspended prison sentence. Alison Shablow from Derbyshire wrote and performed 3 songs about Nazi persecution, including one about the young diarist Anne Frank. Shablow, writes the BBC, claimed the Holocaust was a bunch of lies and referred to Auschwitz as a theme park. She's also been banned from posting anything on social media for 12 months. Now, Alison was convicted of 2 counts of sending an offensive, indecent or menacing message through a public communications network and a 3rd charge relating to a song on YouTube. She was sentenced to 20 weeks in jail, but that will be suspended for 2 years. Now, Gideon Falter, I don't know how he pronounces it. He's the chairman of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. And he said after the sentence that Shablow is a remorseless and repulsive anti-Semite. That's what she is, according to Giddy Falter. He said the sentence sent a strong message that Holocaust denial and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories will not be tolerated. But they will be tolerated, Gideon. You see, they will be tolerated. I will always tolerate the thoughts and the opinions of people whom I disagree with, even if I strongly disagree with them. I and most other rational people will tolerate other people's opinions and their thoughts and their feelings about the world and their feelings about history. Like it or lump it. Falter or Falter is one of the great useful idiots of the world. A Zionist puppet, a hateful man. And of course a wretched coward. Don't forget that he's a wretched, snivelling coward. He's the guy who, along with his goons, threaten venues around the UK that they will lose their business if those venues host speakers who criticise Jewish power or Israeli influence. They are a sham. It's a scam, this whole charity status for the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. It's an affront to decency. They're no charity. It's a puppet group of Hasbara. Israeli propaganda, that's what it is. Now, some of those who have had their meetings or their events shut down by this charity, so-called charity, the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, have threatened that they would formally complain to the Charity Commission and that they would ask for the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism's charity status to be reviewed and revoked. Not a lot has happened on that front. Maybe some of those people who have had their events shut down, maybe they talk a lot of talk, maybe they say a lot of big things, and ultimately when it comes to the crunch, maybe they do nothing. I'm sure you know of whom I'm speaking. A lot of people say a lot of things. There are people who have been shut down by the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism whom are very comfortably well off, who have said they would use their own statuses to challenge the charity status enjoyed by the campaign against anti-Semitism. But nothing has happened on that. Maybe I'm jumping the gun. Maybe it's going to happen. Maybe they're just taking their time. We'll see. The judgment against Alison was ridiculous, of course. You know, so Alison Chablo is a Holocaust revisionist. She doesn't believe that people were gassed. How can that possibly be a crime? Offensive? Maybe. But that's bollocks too. It's annoying at best. Because if you had a family member, long gone maybe, and they're not all dead, God love them, some of them are still alive, but if you had a family member, some of the victims, some of the people who were interned, who were basically imprisoned at Auschwitz or Dachau, some of them are alive, most are dead, but if you did have a family member who was at Auschwitz or Dachau, Alison's comments might be annoying but not harmful in any way. Her songs might piss you off, they might wind you up, but they're not harmful or not threatening in any way. Nor do they incite violence. In effect, the judgment says that in this country, no longer can you give voice to your thoughts. Thoughts are illegal. Feelings about events, historical events, feelings about current events are no longer legitimate if the state says that it harms or it offends. It's Orwell playing out. It's dreadful. It's beyond mad. It's lunacy, really. You know, Alison Chablo, whether you agree with her opinions or not, and I've argued with her several times on this programme about some of her opinions and her feelings, and I think that's the way it used to be. God be with the days when, rather than running around screaming like a headless chicken, is that everybody with whom you disagree be banned. We used to actually meet with people and just argue with them, whether it be at hustings or at town hall meetings or whatever. But the giddy faughters of this world are wretched cowards, and they're puppets of something far more sinister. We know that as well. 12 minutes past the hour. Good luck to Alison Chablo. I don't agree with some or maybe a lot of the things that Alison says or believes herself, but I would defend to the death, and I mean that, her right to say it. And that goes for Tommy Robinson. Don't be saying you're a hypocrite. I'm not. I have said 1,000 times, Tommy Robinson should not be denied the opportunity to speak and say what it is he wants to say, whether it's about radical Islam or geopolitics or anything. Doesn't mean that I don't agree with the judicial decision to find him in contempt of court twice when he risked derailing multi-million-pound grooming trials. That's a different thing entirely. But going out and about and talking about it and making these claims that he makes about Muslims and all of that, even though I disagree with him, I would never deny him the rights to say it. It's a slippery slope, that, when you go down that road. Keep the tweets coming in on that. I know you've got a lot to say about it. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Now, I had a phone call this morning from an old friend. And it's a friend I worked with in London. And when he called me, he sounded very annoyed. Can't say who he is or where he works, but he rang to say, and I'm going to be honest with you, he wasn't the only person who got in touch with me to say what he actually said. He rang to say that he was told by his manager that he should turn up to the canteen at midday today because the company would be observing a minute's silence in memory of those people killed at the Grenfell Tower last year, the fire which killed so many people. They say 73, it was probably more. Terrible thing. So today was the anniversary of it. My old pal was told that they should come and observe the minute's silence, and if people wanted, that time would be made available afterwards to talk about it. Now, my mate is very interested in programmes like this, and he's a decent bloke, and he said, well, no, I don't like that idea. I don't know anybody associated with the tragedy. I've got a lot of work anyway, so I'll give it a miss. And he was told in no uncertain terms by his manager that what sort of person couldn't find it within themselves to give a few minutes to think about others. And he was also advised that it might reflect badly on him if he didn't attend. Team spirit and all of that. Now, he told me this morning that he wouldn't attend, and I spoke to him about an hour and a half ago, and he said he didn't attend. And as the day came to an end today at 4:30, he went and spoke to his manager, who's about 20 years younger than him, and bully for him, he said, don't ever again tell me that I have to do this or I have to do that, and then tell me that it might reflect badly on me if I don't do it. To which, and my friend is honest, to which apparently his manager said fair enough and apologised. Good for him. Can anybody tell me why there was a national minute silence held around the country today for people? Are you unsympathetic, Richie? Of course I'm not. 73 people were burned to death or suffocated to death. You don't dismiss that. You try as bloody hell and be damned as to find out how it happened. And find out what's the real story behind it. But what's this national grieving mindset that seems to have kind of befallen on every man and woman in this country, which I think has its roots in the death of Princess Diana? How has it come to be that we're a nation of people who mourn on demand? You know, whether it's a terrorist attack like we saw here in Manchester, or whether it's something like Grenfell, a terrible, terrible, rotten thing, wrongful death, that they knew that it was likely to happen, that fire. There's something far more sinister going on there, and it'll be whitewashed, and people will never be told the truth as to how it happened. That's my opinion. It's just my opinion. What good is it to the people who died, this outpouring of national emotion for people you never met? It's like the Stepford Wives. These people make me very uneasy, very wary. They're so zombie-like. This is real fuckery. It's proper fuckery, this. People behaving like that. Lighting candles for people they never met. Where's it going to end? They don't question it. Do you know what it is? It's disaster porn. I can't remember who coined that phrase. Whoever did, it's brilliant. Disaster porn. Do you know how crazy things have gotten? I'm willing to bet my last penny on this, and I don't have a lot of pennies, and that's true, by the way. The last penny I have, I'm willing to bet that the majority of people now, when they see a building on fire like last year, or they hear that a bomb has gone off, the majority of people are hoping, they're actually thinking out loud, they're hoping that masses of people are killed in it. And they're disappointed if there's not. I bet you I'm right. It's disaster porn. People are so sick and so twisted because of what the mind control puppeteers have done to them, that when they see something is going on, they actually want to hear hundreds have been killed. Hundreds. I bet you there's disappointment among people. Oh, there was a shooting in London, it was terrorists. There's only 2 people killed. It's not worth me while, that. This is crazy stuff, people. It's crazy stuff all day. Sky, BBC, ITN News, all day. I was thinking, how many more people can they find to bring on screen to talk about how we're all in it together? And they shall never be forgotten. What a monumental load of bollocks. They shall never be forgotten. Because as soon as your man publishes his report and there's another terrorist attack or disaster, the idiots will follow it to mourn it, and those people at Grenfell Tower won't be remembered by anybody. That's what I believe. And I've been looking at this ever since the death of Diana, year in, year out. Crazy, isn't it? Crazy. To have people in jobs being told that if you don't join in, you risk career advancement. Bucket loads of pathos. How does that serve those who were killed last year and the the attempt to find out why they died, who was really behind it, and is it part of some Agenda 21 social cleansing, redevelopment? Mark Windows spoke so brilliantly on this last night. Is it? Will we ever find out? No. Let's get lost in a pathos fest of virtue signalling. People being comforted at their desks in Edinburgh today. What? Come on. 20 minutes past the hour. Come on. It's crazy stuff. Now, the European Union is on the brink of disintegration. And it's all down to European politicians getting migration so badly wrong. Who said that? Who said that? Well, it was actually said by Jean-Claude Juncker's deputy. And he said it in Brussels today. His name is Frans Timmermans. And he sent the shock warning to the European Union and his colleagues, saying that the bloc was on the brink and that the unthinkable has become possible, that the EU is going to break up. Following on from a speech made by the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, Timmermans said, the unthinkable has become possible. Who 5 years ago would have said to the European Union that it could break up and disintegrate? Nobody. And we've got a little bit of audio now. This is Frans Timmermans speaking today in Brussels.
The unthinkable has become possible. Who would have said 5 years ago the European Union can break up and disintegrate? Nobody. It was gratuitous to attack the European Union and its institutions because they were unbreakable anyway. And now we have seen, as a consequence of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, as a consequence of all these crises we've had, that the European Union is not unbreakable, which means that it's valuable.
And he went on to say the issue of migration has played a key role in all of our member states. And then he said, only we can convince our citizens, the European Union that is, only we can convince our citizens that we do have an answer to this, that we shouldn't deny migration, we shouldn't pretend that you can solve it by building fences and walls, and we shouldn't pretend we can solve it by letting everybody in. Now, UKIP leader Gerard Batten, MEP, taking part in the same discussion, when it came to his turn, he pulled no punches whatsoever on the subject of migration.
Your policies have blighted the lives of millions of people. Meanwhile, our security is endangered because of the results of mass immigration. Under Mrs. Merkel's leadership, you have brought in millions of people from Africa, the Middle East and beyond, and you intend to bring in millions more. You have turned many parts of Europe into foreign countries. You use the emotional blackmail argument of talking about helping defenceless refugee families, and yet the reality is that the vast majority of these migrants are young men from Islamic countries. This is not immigration, this is invasion. Traditionally, Europe resisted Islamic invasion. Heroic struggles in the siege of Malta at the gates of Vienna have now been replaced by abject surrender. Islam offers two options: submit or resist. You have decided to surrender and submit on behalf of your citizens, but some states are resisting. Rebellion is now stirring in Hungary, Poland, the Czech Republic, Austria and elsewhere. The tide is turning against the EU. And best of all, we have Brexit, a modern peasants' revolt against their out-of-touch overlords. When Britain leaves the European Union, we can point the way for a Europe of independent, democratic nation-states. Most people want a Europe of genuine trade, friendship and cooperation. They do not want rule from Brussels.
Gerard Batten speaking at the same meeting, the same discussion as the deputy to Juncker, Frans Timmermans there. These people don't get it, of course, people like Batten. You see, they see the symptom and they see the effect. They see the effect is what they see. Wages driven down, public services battered into submission, but they never see the cause, or they do and they don't want to talk about it. It's easy to stoke right versus left, the alt-right feeling, ban all the Muslims, get all the Muslims out of the country. It's easy to do that than to actually look at the real reasons why millions of migrants have come from the Middle East in the last 10 years alone into southern Europe and into the UK. It's wonderful. Identity politics. Us versus them. Right versus left. The truth isn't even that much more complicated as to who's really behind the agenda. Amazing. On that disturbing story covered by everybody today, yesterday as well, but today as well, that 1 in 10 British jihadists have been prosecuted on return to the UK. Now, we're talking about people who left the UK and went to fight in the Middle East on the side of terrorist groups like the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. Since returning, only 1 in 10 have been prosecuted. Ministers have urged the government to toughen terror laws because of this. It's estimated that about 400 Britons returned to the UK from the Middle East since 2012. The Home Office Minister Ben Wallace has said that around 40 had been prosecuted for direct action that they've carried out in Syria. Number of other MPs and ministers and shadow ministers across the House said that this is worrying indeed. Now, Russia Today spoke with terrorism expert Temitope Olodo. He's an expert in such matters, and you'll hear the presenter first, Temitope Olodo, then on the fact that 1 in 10 jihadists have been prosecuted since coming back.
People will be horrified to think that terrorists are roaming freely around in our society. Where are these people?
They're locked up within the community, and that's where the challenge is. We're not just talking about 400 plus individuals that have returned and they are not being prosecuted. We're talking of another 20,000 that are in the watch list and 3,000 that are said to be hardened individuals. So it's a mess.
So you say locked up, in effect, in the community, hiding in the community.
Hiding in the
how
community.
on earth do police officers, intelligence officials find out where they are?
That's the challenge that we have now, and that's the reason why many people are saying that the contest strategy is not fit for purpose any longer, because the community is not really engaging, because these communities are meant to be giving out these individuals, giving the intel to the police and security agents about these individuals returning. And the fact that we're not being proactive enough to pick these individuals up, then we have a problem.
Well, we have a problem. But I know, because it's been reported, even by the right-wing press, that imams around the country, imams who, obviously the most senior cleric in the mosques, they've repeatedly told police about some of these guys who have returned. And not only that, they've also given information to the police about young men whom come to prayers, young men who seem to be going down a bad road. So imams and clerics have done that, and it's my opinion that most Muslims have no idea, of course. No idea. Because these guys, these jihadists, are sponsored by the intelligence agencies that supposedly answer to our government. But of course they don't. So are all of these guys who come back after spending time with the head choppers, are they all possibly deadly? That question is put to the guest by the presenter.
Is it fair to say that every fighter who's returned from the likes of Syria or Iraq or wherever would be a threat to this country? Some may be repenting, some may have been traumatised, they may have regretted going after all.
I use an analogy. If a lion in the zoo kills a human being and tastes blood, that lion is put down, because being in the war front and seeing horror means that you have that psychological challenge. You know, of course, they need to be helped. Some of them might need to be helped. Some of them have been coerced. Some of them might have mental challenges, and that's the reason why we need to know who they are, deconstruct these individuals, speak to them to identify the ones that remain a threat and put them on check. The ones that need to go to prison, they go to prison and come out and become valuable members of the community after they have gone through the de-radicalization process. But the fact that we're not doing anything to them is a challenge for me.
Yeah, put him down, he said. Well, you could put them in jail and try to get to the bottom of it and who they are, but it's becoming increasingly obvious to me that some of these guys are still being handled by MI6 and by intelligence agencies of so-called UK ally countries. That's a conspiracy theory. Well, I would say it's a fact. We know this. You only have to look at the Manchester Arena bombing. And the man blamed for that, Salman Abedi, and how his father, Ramadan Abedi, worked for MI6 in a plot to overthrow, in fact to murder, Colonel Gaddafi in the mid-1990s. Staggering stuff.